So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, we are here today to talk about one player in particular that has shined for the Detroit Lions this season. And this isn't a player that coming into this season was expected to be a superstar. This wasn't a player that was expected to make a major impact, wasn't expected to start, and honestly wasn't even really expected to make the active roster as he began his 2022 campaign on the Detroit Lions practice squad. However, over the last month or so of football, the Detroit Lions have suddenly found a pass rushing gem in 6th round selection, James Houston. And today, we're going to take a look at this standout player. We're going to take a look at the rise of James Houston, what he's done so far for the Detroit Lions in his limited reps and limited opportunities, as well as just kind of talk about the pick, the player, and the value that the Detroit Lions got at pick 217. So, with that being said and all the intro stuff out of the way, let's get into going into a deep dive on the Detroit Lions' newest star pass rusher, James Houston. Now, James Houston, as I mentioned, was a 6th round selection in the 2022 NFL Draft as he was taken with the 217th overall selection in that draft. Now, James Houston ended up failing to make the active 53-man roster after the preseason had concluded, but was one of the first players that was signed and was one of the last players cut from the active roster and was one of the first players signed to the practice squad. The Lions picked him in the 6th round of the draft and absolutely knew there was something there with James Houston. The production at Jackson State could not be overlooked, and even though it might have been at a lower Division I school, even though it may not have been at the FBS level, James Houston's astronomical numbers at the collegiate level were warranting of him remaining on the practice squad at the very least. Now, James Houston, for the first few months of his NFL career, spent time practicing with the practice squad, right? He would practice, he would, work out at Allen Park, he would be with the team, but never actually suited up until the team needed him. And even despite the major injuries to guys like John Kaminsky and Josh Pascal and even Charles Harris at the edge position, James Houston didn't really get his opportunity until week 12 versus the Buffalo Bills in prime time on Thanksgiving, where he made his first career game and played in his first game of his NFL career. Now, James Houston was a role player in this game. He was not expected to come in and start. He was not expected to come in and be a huge impact player. And on just 5 snaps defensively, James Houston totaled 2 sacks as well as a fumble recovery. That fumble recovery coming on his first play from scrimmage, and that was a special teams rep and a special teams fumble recovery. But the awareness on your first rep of NFL play to get a fumble recovery was a good start for James Houston and was a confidence booster. But where he really started to go off was on the defensive line, as James Houston, on just 5 defensive reps, sacked quarterback Josh Allen twice, once to end the half and once to get the ball back to the Detroit Lions on a crucial 3rd down after a turnover. James Houston was the talk of the town in Detroit after Thanksgiving. Despite the really close loss, everybody thought they saw something really special in the rookie linebacker, and the week after that, as they took on the Jacksonville Jaguars, James Houston was expected to have an expanded role, and he did, playing 12 pass rushing snaps versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. James Houston once again had 2 quarterback hits, but this time only coming away with a single sack. However, once again, that sack was at the very end of the first half and ended up stalling a very promising Jaguars drive up to that point. That sack was really a tone setter going into half, and the Lions came out and just ran away with the game in the second half, in large part to the momentum boosting sack that James Houston provided for the Lions defense. And then 1 week later, James Houston once again made his third straight career game, and on an even more expanded role, playing 21 snaps against the Minnesota Vikings, he came away with yet another quarterback sack, another quarterback hit, as well as multiple more pressures on Kirk Cousins. Now, James Houston is not a player that necessarily is going to play every down. I think 20 to 25 snaps, right around a third of the snaps for the defensive side of the ball, is the perfect number for James Houston, as he isn't really a run stopper, right? He's not going to set the edge. He's not going to, really affect the running game all that positively 90% of the time. But where he really truly excels is those pass rushing downs. So when you get to a 3rd and long, when you get up by 2 scores and there are obvious passing situations, James Houston is the guy that you're going to put in each and every one of those times, and he is winning his one-on-one matches. Why the defense or why the offensive line is concerned with Aiden Hutchinson and they're double teaming him, why they're concerned with, Isaiah Buggs and Aleem McNeil up the middle, James Houston quietly has been absolutely dominant at the other edge rushing position, and so far this season, on just 38 defensive snaps, has 4 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and 5 more pressures on top of that to affect the quarterback's play. And it's not like these sacks are coming off of gimmies, right? It's not like these are gimmicky sacks. They're not blitzes. He's not a free rusher. All 4 of his sacks and all 5 of his QB hits have come from clean one-on-one victories versus the offensive tackle. The first 2 came from, of course, the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, where he cleanly beat the Buffalo Bills offensive lineman right off the snap. In the second sack, he actually got chipped at the line and still beat the left tackle to sack Josh Allen for his second of the game. Against Jacksonville, he had a really clean swipe move versus the Jacksonville Jaguars left tackle and ended up getting a hit on Trevor Lawrence, even though Lawrence was able to get the ball out immediately. And then, of course, the famous little skip jump that he did against the left tackle later in the game to seal the half at the end was one of the more talked about pass rush moves for the Detroit Lions this year. And once again, he showed elite quickness, elite bend, really good hands, and he just blew right past the offensive tackle to end the half in Jacksonville. And then against the Minnesota Vikings, once again, it wasn't a free blitz. It was a one-on-one, your guy versus James Houston, and James Houston beat the starting left tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, who has, for the most part this season, been playing at a high level, has gotten Pro Bowl votes, is I would argue, top 15, top 10, top 15 left tackle in the game right now, and James Houston made it look easy. And if he wasn't being held so much against Minnesota, it's pretty realistic to think that he could have gotten 2, if maybe even 3 sacks, because he was around Kirk Cousins all game long. Now, as I said, James Houston on the season has only played 38 snaps through 3 games, but on those 38 snaps has 4 sacks, 5 hits, and 5 more pressures. James Houston, with his 4 sacks on the season, has now totaled more than number 1 overall pick Trayvon Walker, number 5 overall pick Kayvon Thibodeau, pick number 26 Jermaine Johnson, and pick 30 George Karlaftis. He has outproduced 4 first-round edge rushers, and for that matter, every other edge rusher in his rookie class, with the exception of teammate Aiden Hutchinson, who sits at 7 sacks on the season, which of course is 3 more than James Houston. James Houston is maybe the best value in this draft class, and he is arguably the best pass rusher in this draft class. Now, obviously, he's not necessarily quite as good as Aiden Hutchinson. I wouldn't say he's better than Trayvon Walker right now as a fully well-rounded player, because as I said, you cannot have James Houston in the running game. You will not win very many running reps on the defense if James Houston is a primary edge setter for your team. But as a pure pass rusher, James Houston is easily the most efficient pass rusher on the Detroit Lions and maybe in the rookie class. And as a pure pass rusher, he may be the best player from the 2022 class. And to put it into perspective just how efficient James Houston has been, if you take the average, right, sack per X number of snaps and you put that and compare it to how many snaps Aiden Hutchinson have played, put it to how many snaps Travon Walker has played, put it to as many snaps as guys like George Karlaftis and some of these other first-round players have, that would put James Houston on pace for 80.5 sacks over 17 games. If you were to expand the sample size of James Houston's productivity to the number of sacks to the number of snaps Aiden Hutchinson has played, James Houston statistically would be on pace for 80 sacks right now with 3 games to spare in the NFL season. That is how productive James Houston has been throughout his first 3 games of NFL play as a rookie. Now, obviously, those numbers are not going to sustain, right? Those numbers are not going to stay up there. He's not going to reach 80 sacks. He's not going to play 800, 900 snaps a season. That is a completely unrealistic thing to say. And obviously, 80 sacks is the most ridiculous number. That is Hall of Fame-esque numbers for a career, let alone a season, but that shows you just how productive James Houston has been for the Detroit Lions, and even in an extremely limited role. James Houston could be an extremely efficient pass rusher, and the Lions may have found their pass rushing duo of the future, and very well could be close to completing their defensive line, in large part to the pass rush that James Houston provides for the Detroit Lions. So with that being said, James Houston is the steal of the draft. You could look at Malcolm Rodriguez, you could look at Kirby Joseph, you could look at other players from around the league and around the draft class, but if I had to give you one steal, one player that went in day 3 and late at day 3 at that, and has become one of the league's most efficient pass rushers in a limited role, that guy is James Houston. He has the second most sacks among his rookie class. He is by far the most efficient pass rusher in his rookie class and easily the most efficient pass rusher in the NFL right now, as well as being at an extremely discounted price at pick 217. He has outproduced the number 1 overall pick despite playing 9 less games. He has outproduced Jermaine Johnson, Kayvon Thibodeau, as well as George Karlaftis despite playing significantly less snaps and significantly less games. James Houston is a problem. His nickname of the problem is not to be taken lightly. This pick did not look great from Brad Holmes at the very beginning of the season. A player in the 6th round that ended up not making the roster isn't necessarily a great thing for a GM in his 2nd year that really needs to build through the draft. But as of right now, James Houston looks to be the best value from the draft, looks to be the biggest steal from the class, and looks to be a budding superstar in the making. So, with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about James Houston. What are you guys thinking about the 6th round rookie from Jackson State? Do you think his productivity can continue? Do you think he can continue to get sack after sack and maybe even have a couple big games and finish the season with 8, maybe 10 sacks on the season at the pace that he's going? Very curious what you guys think, but with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, and as always, go Lions.